The suburban street was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that felt like it had been waiting for something to disturb it. Mark Thompson parked the moving van in front of the new house, exhaling a long breath as he surveyed the tidy brick facade. Beside him, Sarah, his wife, checked the list of boxes in the moving inventory on her phone, her brow furrowed not from worry, but from the persistent feeling that something was slightly off. "It's perfect," she said softly, though her eyes lingered on the darkened windows, as if expecting them to twitch or shift. "I can't believe we finally have a place of our own." Mark smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "It's a new chapter, a fresh start." Lily, their 16-year-old daughter, trailed behind, dragging a box labeled "Fragile Bedroom" and grumbling under her breath. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends, but her gaze kept drifting toward the backyard. The faint rustle of the trees in the wind seemed louder than it should, as though the house itself was listening. The family moved in over the weekend, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. By Sunday night, the living room looked cozy, books neatly stacked on shelves, a soft rug under the sofa, and framed photos of family memories already adorning the mantel. Yet beneath the comfort, a subtle unease had taken root. It began with small, almost imperceptible things. A chair slightly shifted from its usual position, a mug not where they left it. At first, Mark attributed it to exhaustion or forgetfulness, but Lily noticed something stranger. While she unpacked her room, she thought she saw a shadow pass across the hallway mirror just for a second. When she blinked, it was gone. "Dad," she whispered one evening as she tucked herself into bed, "I think someone's here, in the house." Mark chuckled lightly, bending down to her level. "It's just the house settling, Lily. You've been cooped up all day. Big houses make big noises." Sarah, listening from the doorway, nodded in agreement, though she herself had felt the unease. "It's probably nothing. Go to sleep." But sleep that night was uneasy. Lily's eyes snapped open at a soft, deliberate creak from upstairs, the sound of someone pacing, slow, measured. Her heart thumped, but when she called out, silence. Only the familiar hum of the refrigerator answered. The next morning, strange occurrences escalated. Pantry items were missing, though the cabinets were locked, and small scratches appeared on the kitchen floor, faint enough to be dismissed, but noticeable to Mark, who was particularly observant. Sarah found her keys moved from the counter to the living room table. Mark's first thought was that he had done it absent-mindedly, but the unease gnawed at him. One afternoon, Lily, bored and scrolling through her phone, glanced up to notice a figure at the top of the stairs, silhouetted in the dim light from the landing. She froze, staring, her pulse quickening. When she blinked, it was gone. "See, I told you something's off," she muttered to herself, shivering despite the warmth of her bedroom. Mark and Sarah's skepticism remained intact. The cameras had not yet been installed, and every time Mark suggested a walkthrough, he convinced himself the noises were just creaks from settling floorboards or the wind against the old house's eaves. Yet the audience, or the reader, was now privy to something the family could not see. In the dark crawl space beneath the house, a pair of eyes glimmered faintly in the shadows. The stranger, silent and meticulous, observed their every move. Months of preparation had gone into this. He had chosen this house because of its quiet streets and the apparent routine of the Thompsons. He had slipped in unnoticed, hiding in the crawl space, feeding off the family's every habit. That evening, Sarah was alone, folding laundry in the bedroom. A soft hum drifted from the hallway, a tune she didn't recognize. She froze. The hum stopped. She glanced toward the door, but the hallway was empty. Dismissing it as her imagination, she shook her head and continued folding clothes. Meanwhile, the stranger moved silently above, navigating the attic with the ease of a shadow. He paused, listening to the family, memorizing their rhythms, taking note of who slept where and how often the door to the master bedroom opened. Every subtle sound became data, every step a clue. Back downstairs, Lily tiptoed toward the kitchen, craving a midnight snack. She noticed the fridge door was slightly ajar, though she was certain she had closed it. Her heart pounding, she leaned forward, peering inside. Nothing missing this time, but the sense of being watched lingered heavy in the air. In the living room, Mark sat on the sofa reviewing work emails, unaware of the shadow that briefly crossed the wall behind him, too quick to register clearly, but enough to make the audience's heart race. As midnight approached, tension coiled in the quiet house like a living thing. Lily crept back to her room, locking the door this time. She stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds, trying to ignore the distant, deliberate thump coming from the floor above. The hum returned, faint and almost mocking, fading as quickly as it had started. Then the final moment arrived, a visual cliffhanger for part 2. Lily's eyes widened as she caught a dark figure standing at the top of the stairs, unmoving, almost invisible in the dim light. A cold fear settled in her chest. She called out, "Who's there?" No answer, just the oppressive stillness. And then the figure vanished. The camera pans, in the mind's eye, to the crawl space where the stranger crouches, a thin, almost imperceptible smile forming on his face. The house was his stage now, and the family, his unwitting audience. The screen fades to black, leaving the reader with the chilling question, how long has he been here? What is he planning? And will they ever know before it's too late? The morning after the shadow appeared at the top of the stairs, Lily woke with a lingering unease. The memory of that dark figure haunted her eyelids, as though the house itself had imprinted it on her dreams. She told her parents, hoping to convince them of what she'd seen. "Lily, it's just shadows," Mark said, rubbing his temple. "This house has old wiring, old floors. Noises happen. It's nothing." Sarah, brushing her hair in front of the bedroom mirror, tried to reassure her daughter. "Maybe your imagination is playing tricks. You're tired from unpacking." But Lily wasn't convinced, and as the day progressed, the house began to assert itself in subtle, unnerving ways. The kitchen cupboard they had checked that morning was slightly ajar again, as though someone had peeked inside while they weren't looking. A faint smudge of dirt on the countertop suggested someone had leaned over it. Lily's backpack, which she had set in her room, had been moved, slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to disturb her. Mark noticed something else entirely. As he prepared coffee, he caught the faintest reflection of movement in the hallway mirror. At first, he thought it was Sarah, but when he turned, no one was there. His chest tightened, a physical manifestation of unease he didn't want to admit. That evening, Sarah decided to do laundry in the basement. She carried a basket of clothes down the creaking stairs, the hum of the washing machine echoing in the otherwise silent room. As she bent to load the drum, a soft voice whispered her name. "Sarah." Her breath caught. She spun around, heart hammering, expecting to see Mark, but the room was empty. A shadow flickered in the corner, a trick of the dim basement light, she told herself. But even as she returned upstairs, her hands shook, and the sense of being watched lingered, coiling around her neck like a noose. Meanwhile, the audience is shown the stranger in action, unseen. He moved silently through the crawl space, observing every routine. Every meal, every conversation, every fleeting gesture was cataloged. He had studied the family for months, anticipating patterns and memorizing movements. For him, the house was a theater, and they were performers, oblivious to the audience. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She had a habit of checking her phone one last time before closing her eyes, but the screen's soft glow illuminated something terrifying, the reflection of a face in the bedroom window behind her. She whipped around, but nothing was there. Her pulse raced, and she pulled the blanket tightly over her shoulders, whispering a silent prayer to the dark. By morning, the house's atmosphere had grown oppressive. Items began to disappear or reappear in strange places. A pair of Sarah's earrings were found on the windowsill. Mark's wallet, untouched since the morning, sat on the bathroom counter. Unable to ignore the growing tension, Mark installed security cameras in the main hallways and living areas. Yet when reviewing the footage later, no one appeared in the hallway at night, despite the clear signs that someone had been there. The invisible intruder left no digital trace. Lily, unable to contain her fear, ventured into the attic, where she had been warned never to go alone. Her flashlight illuminated dusty boxes, cobwebs, and forgotten furniture. Something caught her eye, a small, worn notebook tucked between old blankets. Curiosity overcame her caution, and she pulled it out. It was a journal. The pages were filled with meticulous notes, descriptions of the family, daily routines, observations about when they slept, what they ate, and even what they laughed about. Some entries were chillingly intimate, such as notes about Lily's favorite bedtime snack and Mark's coffee habits. One passage ended with a single sentence in jagged handwriting. "They think they're safe, but they don't know I'm already inside." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. She clutched the notebook to her chest and ran downstairs. She showed it to her parents. Mark skimmed the pages, his face going pale. This is serious. Someone has been living here, in our house, watching us." Sarah's hands trembled. "Months? How is that even possible?" Before Mark could answer, a loud thump came from above, as if someone had intentionally made their presence known. The family froze, their eyes darting toward the ceiling. The sound repeated, 2 more thumps, deliberate and heavy. Mark grabbed a flashlight, signaling the others to stay behind him. He ascended the attic stairs cautiously. Each step groaned under his weight, echoing in the stillness. When he reached the top, the attic was empty, except for a sliding panel in the corner, slightly ajar. Dust motes hung in the beam of his flashlight, but the panel revealed nothing at first glance. The audience knows better. The stranger had just slipped back into the hidden crawl space after watching them discover the journal, delighting in their terror. That night, the family huddled together in the living room. Mark tried to sound reassuring, though his voice betrayed a tremor. "We're going to call the police in the morning. Whoever this is, they can't stay here." But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the house was no longer theirs. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every floorboard creak louder. The stranger's presence was palpable, omnipresent, even when he was out of sight. As the family attempted to sleep, the audience glimpses the Strange Range's hideout, crouched in darkness, whispering to himself, "They'll never find me. Not yet. Not until I'm ready." A final shot shows Lily, half asleep, turning her head toward the bedroom door. A shadow moves just outside, stopping abruptly as if observing her. The camera cuts to black, leaving a lingering sense of dread. The house had become a prison of uncertainty. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement made Mark, Sarah, and Lily jump. Even with the journal in hand, the reality was almost impossible to grasp. Someone had been living under their roof, watching them for months. By mid-morning, Mark had made the decision. "We're calling an inspector," he said firmly. "This house is hiding something, and we need to find it before it finds us again." The inspector, a middle-aged man named Mr. Reynolds, arrived with a flashlight, gloves, and a clipboard. His experience with old homes had taught him to look for hidden passages and crawl spaces, places where someone could stay undetected. As Mark and Sarah followed, Lily clutched the journal, flipping to passages detailing their routines. Her hands shook. She couldn't stop thinking of all the nights she had slept unaware of someone moving just above her. Crawl spaces, false walls, attics, they're not always obvious, Reynolds explained as he moved through the living room. He tapped walls and floors, listening for hollow sounds. Some people get very creative if they want to hide. The inspector's tone was calm, but his eyes narrowed as he moved toward the attic stairs. "You said the noises mostly come from above?" Mark nodded. "The journal, too. It mentioned someone moving around at night." With a flashlight cutting through the dusty attic, Reynolds carefully inspected the floorboards and walls. Mark followed, scanning every corner. Sarah remained at the bottom of the stairs, tense, ready to intervene. Then Reynolds paused. "Here." He pressed his hand against a section of the wall near the ceiling, a panel just slightly recessed. "This isn't original to the house. It's a hiding spot. Could be large enough for someone to squeeze into." Mark's stomach dropped. "A hiding spot? You mean someone's up there?" Before Reynolds could answer, a low, deliberate thump echoed from behind the panel. Dust fluttered down like tiny snowflakes. The panel shook slightly, as if pushed from the inside. Mark instinctively took a step back, pulling Sarah and Lily with him. "Hello?" he called, trying to keep his voice steady. From the darkness, a voice answered, but calm, eerily composed. "I've been here, watching, learning." The blood drained from their faces. The stranger stepped slowly, emerging from the panel. His eyes were sharp, scanning each of them like a predator calculating its next move. Lily gasped, dropping the journal. Who are you?" The stranger smiled faintly. "You don't know me, but I know everything about you. Every movement, every habit, every little secret." Mark stepped forward, fists clenched. "You can't stay here. Get out or we'll call the police." The stranger tilted his head. "The police?" He laughed softly, unnerving in its calmness. "By the time they arrive, it will be too late. Or perhaps not. Perhaps I'll leave. Perhaps I won't." Sarah's voice trembled. "Why are you doing this? Why our family?" "I chose carefully. Some houses, some families, they feel like they belong to me before I even enter. You felt safe. That's what I liked most, your sense of security. It made it easy to watch." A tense silence filled the attic. Mark glanced at Reynolds, who had quietly reached for his phone, dialing emergency services. But even as the call connected, the stranger shifted, moving with unnatural speed toward the attic opening. Mark lunged, tackling the figure to the ground. Dust flew, and the stranger twisted with remarkable strength, striking Mark lightly, but enough to stagger him. Lily screamed and tried to help, grabbing a metal lamp from the side table. Reynolds stepped forward, pressing the flashlight against the stranger's face. "Stop! Police are on their way." For a moment, the stranger froze, his eyes glinting. Then, almost casually, he said, "I never expected to be caught, but I expected you to panic." At that moment, the front door burst open. Police officers poured into the house, drawn by Reynolds' call. The stranger assessed them, calculated his odds, but before he could react further, the officers restrained him with surprising ease. Mark, Sarah, and Lily collapsed in the living room, trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. The stranger, calm, collected, almost smug, was handcuffed and led away. As he passed Lily, he whispered softly, "You've seen only a fraction. I could have stayed and watched forever." The words left a cold trace in her mind. Later, the police conducted a thorough search of the house. Hidden crawl spaces, false panels, and tunnels were discovered. Cameras, notes, and makeshift bedding revealed the stranger's months-long presence.
Every night he had watched their routines, documenting every intimate detail in the journal Lily had found. Flashbacks showed the audience how close the family had come to disaster. Nights when he had lingered in Lily's room, when he had almost opened the master bedroom door, when he had toyed with leaving signs that would escalate fear. Mark shook his head in disbelief. How? How did we not see any of this? Sarah hugged Lily tightly. We were living with a ghost in our home, that's how. Yet, as the family tried to breathe again, a lingering fear remained. The stranger had left his mark, psychologically, emotionally, and the thought that someone could do this so quietly, so deliberately, was almost unbearable. As they sat together in the living room, police officers bagging evidence, the camera, or the audience's perspective, lingered on the panel in the attic, slightly ajar. Even handcuffed, restrained, the stranger had left a subtle trace, a reminder that his presence was complete, intimate, and invasive. The climax was shocking, intense, and exhausting. The invisible intruder had been discovered, but the emotional impact on the family and the lingering fear of unseen threats made the resolution feel incomplete. The stage was set for part 4, where the aftermath and psychological consequences would unfold, leaving the audience both satisfied and unsettled.
The house was quiet again, but it felt different. Mark, Sarah, and Lily moved through the rooms with a mix of relief and unease. The stranger had been arrested, the police had collected the evidence, and yet the sense of safety that had once filled their home was gone. Every creak of the floorboard, every shadow in the corner of their eyes reminded them that their sanctuary had been violated. Mark sat on the living room sofa, rubbing his face. I thought once he was gone, we could just move on. His voice was heavy, weighed down by disbelief. But this house doesn't feel like ours anymore. Sarah, folding laundry in the corner, nodded silently. Even small tasks felt strange now, tainted by the knowledge that someone had been watching their routines, their habits, their most private moments. She placed a sweater into the basket with deliberate care, as if the act itself could erase the memory. Lily wandered to her room, journal in hand. She flipped through the pages again, reading entries she had already memorized. The stranger had documented her favorite bedtime snack, the way she laughed at a joke, the exact time her parents tucked her in each night. Her chest tightened, the journal suddenly heavy in her hands. I can't believe he was here all this time, she whispered to herself, glancing toward the attic. All this time. The police investigation revealed horrifying details. Hidden crawl spaces, false panels, and small tunnels beneath the house had been discovered. Cameras, recording devices, and meticulous notes proved that this was not just a random intrusion. It was a calculated, obsessive intrusion, months in the making. The officers reassured the family that the stranger had been arrested before he could escalate his plans, but reassurance did little to ease the fear. Mark stared at the attic panel, now sealed, imagining the stranger crouched just out of sight, silently watching them for hours on end. Days passed, but the psychological impact lingered. Lily refused to sleep in her room alone, choosing instead to bunk with her parents, even though the space felt cramped and uncomfortable. Every knock, every creak made her flinch, imagining the shadow of the stranger lurking in the corners. Sarah began checking locks obsessively, even double-checking the windows she knew were secure. She found herself walking through the house at night, flashlight in hand, scanning walls, floors, and ceilings as though the intruder might have returned. Mark tried to convince them all that the danger was over, but he too found himself staring at the ceiling at night, imagining the stranger moving silently above them. Sleep became elusive, replaced by vivid flashbacks of shadows, whispers, and the panel in the attic. The media caught wind of the story. News outlets ran segments on the home invader who lived undetected, showing reenactments and interviews. Friends and neighbors offered sympathy, but their reassurances felt hollow. The strangers in their neighborhood suddenly felt suspect, each passerby a potential threat in their heightened state of fear. Even as life returned to a semblance of normalcy, there were lingering reminders. A missing pen, a moved chair, the sound of footsteps on the stairs all triggered a spike of panic. Mark, Sarah, and Lily were hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. The stranger's invasion had not just violated their home, but reshaped the way they experienced the world. One evening, Mark suggested a family movie night to try and reclaim a sense of normalcy. They sat on the sofa, the room dimly lit, popcorn in hand, attempting to laugh at the on-screen antics. But Lily's eyes kept darting to the shadows at the corners of the room. She noticed a faint silhouette at the window, or so she thought. Her heart jumped, and she pressed herself closer to her mother. Sarah noticed her daughter's tension. "It's okay, Lily. No one's out there. We're safe." But the camera lingers on the window. A dark figure watches from a distance, indistinct but undeniably present. The stranger in custody could do no more harm, yet the fear he seeded had planted the possibility of someone else, someone unseen, waiting in the shadows. As the night wore on, the family tried to sleep. Lily clutched a pillow tightly, Sarah double-checked her door's locks, and Mark sat awake, listening. The house was silent, or as silent as it could be. Yet every creak sounded like footsteps, every flicker of light seemed deliberate. In the final, chilling moment, Lily's eyes fluttered open. The bedroom window, cracked slightly for air, reflected the moonlight. In that reflection, she thought she saw a dark figure standing across the street, watching. It didn't move, didn't breathe, yet the presence was undeniably present. Her pulse spiked, a cold shiver running down her spine. She whispered, barely audibly, "Not again." The screen fades to black. The audience is left with the unsettling realization that the nightmare may not be over, that the fear and psychological scars are lasting, and that the shadow of the stranger, or someone like him, might always linger just out of sight.